High school is tough, and the classes are often the least of a student's worries. Between social navigation, hormones, and parental pressure, it's a miracle any of us make it out of that jungle alive. Still, it's only high school, and certainly history's greatest geniuses would skate through, or would we? High school as we know, it is a relatively recent invention, and many of history's greatest geniuses would be ill-equipped to learn in such a regimented environment. Even those who might flourish academically may find themselves challenged in our departments or face social challenges. But who would make it through, and who would flunk out? So, before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Cherny History channel. Archimedes stood out even among the remarkable scientists and mathematicians of the ancient Greek world. His work on geometric problems contained some early forms of calculus, and his inventions, they are legendary in the Greek world, including legends say a giant head ray that defended a city from attacking ships. When is it now thought? Because his work underwrites much of mathematics. Archimedes' discoveries permeate every level of math taught in high school. When would they flunk out? Frankly, he wouldn't. His mathematical work suggests a basic understanding of calculus and other advanced mathematics. Any new science would simply be a matter of assimilating the new facts into his already expansive worldview. If Archimedes left school, it would likely be of his own accord, and it's safe to assume he would quickly get a job at a major tech company and begin constructing incredible feats of engineering, like the giant crane arm he used to defend the city of Syracuse. Isaac Newton essentially revolutionized optics and developed calculus. Oh, and came up with the theory of gravity. No big deal. Newton's contributions are tough throughout the school system, but most notably in physics and calculus. It's safe to say the contemporary high school courses in mathematics and science would present a significant obstacle to Newton. Skilled in Latin, he would also likely do well in foreign languages. However, today's PE equipment would stump Newton. A small and sickly child and social side of school might cause him to simply leave of his own accord, as he had a singular talent for attracting bullies. Newton was an autodidact and a genius, so the lack of a degree wouldn't present much of a challenge. He would likely take a little work simply to survive, then experiment in his spare time until he invented something that would catapult him to fame, fortune, and honorary degrees. Who overshadowed during his lifetime by Archibald Thomas Edison. These days, Tesla is recognized for his astonishing contributions to electrical engineering and his almost prophetic visions of technology's future possibilities. Students would likely encounter Tesla's work in a physics course, a general science course, or an engineering course. Tesla, the definition of a star student and overachiever, would skate through a contemporary high school and probably take a few dozen extracurriculars on the side. Unfortunately, Tesla's life skills, they are not on par with his scientific skills. Despite being the greatest inventor of his era, he was routinely taken advantage of and perished deeply in debt after living in a hotel for several years. Considered by many to be the foremost genius of Renaissance, Da Vinci contributed to field too numerous to list completely here, including art, science, engineering, mathematics, architecture, geometry, and anatomy. Da Vinci comes up often in modern high school courses, although primarily in the visual arts and anatomical science. When would they flunk out? which is a full one, because even if Da Vinci there dropped into a contemporary high school with no context, he would likely be able to appreciate calculus, physics and other challenging subjects with easy. However, Da Vinci was an intuitive genius who solved problems his own way, and it's entirely possible that his unconventional way of doing this might bring him into conflict with the school system, possibly leading to expulsion. Lack of a degree would present no challenge whatsoever to Da Vinci, who could turn his mind in any direction his choice. His artistic skills alone would open many doors for him, or perhaps he would simply pursue his passion for invention, get a couple of important patents and live like a king. Hippocrates is called the father of medicine for a reason. While his ideas may be out of date, the way he approached medicine separated it from superstitious tinkering and created a rational and evidence-based methodology. Everyone learns about the Hippocratic oath. First, do no harm, but most of Hippocrates' teachings have long since been superseded. Whose would have not aren't through until medical school? When would they flunk out? By the 8th grade. Hippocrates was a clever man and a gifted doctor, but there is no reason to believe he had the kind of wide-ranging genius that would allow him to skate through a course on algebra, for example. Unfortunately for Hippocrates, the practice of medicine requires significant education these days, and he wouldn't get far without a high school degree. He could perhaps find some menial work in a hospital and work his way up as far as possible, given his lack of education. The foremost scientific genius of the 20th century, Einstein is most famous for both his special and general theories of relativity and the mass-energy equivalence formula, which are far from his only achievements, but are the best now. Students most likely begin learning about Einstein in the history classes, but along with Newton he would dominate a contemporary physics class. There is a myth that Einstein flunked out of the math class. The truth is, he failed the life science and language portion of an entrance exam for college and he promptly retook it and passed it. Einstein would only flunk out of a complementary high school if he left he had better things to do, which he might. Assuming what Einstein did found school tiresome and chose to leave, he could likely simply continue his mathematical work and continue to write earth-shaking paper until he was awarded an honorary doctorate, which would happen in short order. Like many people on this list, Hassan ibn al-Haytham, Latinized as Alhazen, was a polymath. However, his great contributions were there in the field of optics. Alhazen's work appears in various forms in life science, biology and physics courses. While his astronomical and optical work would prepare him for the sciences, he would start running into trouble around his junior year in trigonometry. Alhazen's road would be too, without a degree, perhaps leading to a menial, wage-slave existence. Even during his actual life, he found himself unable to hold down work, despite his clear genius and his massive contributions to science. Marie Curie is most famous as the woman who developed, along with her husband, the theory of radioactivity. She also contributed to the field of medical science, developing mobile radiography centers during World War I. Students might encounter Curie in a general science course, but they are most likely to spend time with her in chemistry and physics. Their radioactivity as an atomic phenomenon would be examined. Curie is one of the few people on this list who would likely do better in a contemporary school system. Her knowledge was not that far behind our own, and the overwhelming sexism of his day in the scientist fields is not absent, at least less prominent. If she were unable to continue her studies for some reason, Curie could fall back on tutoring, something she sometimes did to help provide for her family. Darwin was a biologist and naturalist who changed the world when he articulated a mechanism by which species could evolve: natural selection. Evolution is the underpinning of all modern biology, a field that Darwin describes like a colossus. Darwin had already established a taste for natural history by the time he was a child, and while he would excel in the soft sciences and humanities, contemporary mathematics could present serious challenges. He'd likely have to leave school by his junior year. Darwin had two great adventures in life: his formidable intellect and his wealthy family. He worked with his doctor father, and it's likely he would be given some position in his father's clinic, high school degree or no. All of this would be complicated by Darwin's quasiness at the sight of blood. Ptolemy's primary contribution there in the field of astronomy, in which he provided tables of calculate the positions of the sun and moon, and geography, in which he created the first reliable maps of the Greek world. Ptolemy's discoveries are fairly rudimentary by today's standards, so he is only full in history classes and the early units of physics and astronomy. His greatest achievements establishing a coherent system of described and if-centered universe had the unfortunate distinction of being based on a completely discredited premise. He is often studied today merely as a prelude to the Copernican revolution. Ptolemy would likely find contemporary school very challenging. If he only kept that kick now previously, he would flunk out by the 8th grade. Ptolemy is a shadow figure in history. They are not even sure where he was born. However, even if he found modern mathematics challenging, he could always fall back on the universal language: music. His work on a diatonic scale is not the "he is better now" work, but it was still influential. William Shakespeare. He wrote a few plays. Shakespeare's work are full at various levels from 8th grade to senior years. Shakespeare's creating writing achievements would be dazzling, but his indifference to grammar and punctuation and his annoying habit of making up new words would get him kicked out by his sophomore years. Never mind would by the he'd be Lord Master of the Drama Club. Like many people with no degree, he would know into the arts, and we would all be better for it. Perhaps he'd end up an HBO showrunner. The founding father Benjamin Franklin had a lot more going on than politics. Aside from his famous experiments with electricity, he dabbled in oceanography, meteorology and demography. Aside from history class, Franklin is sometimes tough in general science courses, particularly in relation to his work with electricity. When would they flunk out? Almost immediately. In Franklin's case, it's not so much a matter of intelligence as disciplines. His mind was far too restless to sit in a class all day than there are the experiments to do. In real life, Franklin became rich in his 20s by publishing the Pennsylvania Gazette and Poor Richard's Almanac. It's safe to say he would find some way to be successful, perhaps by publishing news and opinions online. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote The Prince, a text for revolutionary of understanding of civics and politics. Machiavelli stood training in high school but would absolutely come up in a course on civics of European history. Ironically, Machiavelli's reputation as a brutal, ruthless political operative is unearned. He was simply reporting on the savage political landscape in Italy at the time, so expect him to pass civics, but potentially be stumped by modern math and science. He was not a front-of-camera kind of guy, so he could very easily start volunteering behind the scenes with local political campaign and work he was up from there. So, this is the Cherny History channel, and sorry for my English.